It stores the excess energy from Mega Evolution, so after a long time passes, its body starts to melt. That's kind of a funny tweet. I sure hope the replies are... Oh, that's, they're getting canceled for this one. I mean, look, even my terminally online friend has something to say about this entire deal. Time to use them for content. Anyway, hi, I'm Dream. After slumbering for a good 7 years since Pokemon Let's Go came out, Mega Evolutions are back, and with them, the never-ending debate of, is using Mega Evolution abusing your Pokemon? Well, today we'll hopefully answer that question and many more about this strange phenomena. Due to their importance in Pokemon Legends ZA, I thought it would be a good idea to compile everything we know about them currently to understand how Mega Evolution works and all the lore that surrounds it. There's a lot of conflicting information, and it has had so many appearances and so many different aspects of Pokemon media that it can quickly become overwhelming. Regardless, let's do our very best to understand it all. Before we talk about Mega Evolution itself, we have to understand what evolution is when it comes to Pokemon. It's a phenomena that is completely different from its real-life equivalent, Darwin's theory of evolution. The recently released Pokécology book actually has a page dedicated to contrasting these two things. Evolution in Pokemon refers to a sudden change in characteristics like appearance, strength, abilities. Our world's version of evolution, instead, refers to slow changes that happen as a result of natural selection throughout countless generations. Does this mean that natural selection and evolution as we know it don't exist in the Pokemon world? That is a surprisingly complicated question. There are a few references to ancestors of various Pokemon across the games, but you'd be surprised with how little it is actually mentioned. We have the obvious example. Mew has the DNA of all Pokemon and can learn every single TM as a result. Because of this, it is believed in-universe that it is the ancestor of all Pokemon. But other than Mew, there are only a few official mentions of Pokemon that are related in this way, normally fossil Pokemon. Arcan was believed to be the ancestor of all bird Pokemon, but later Dex entries mention this as being deconfirmed. Armaldo, on the other hand, is confirmed to be the ancestor of most bug Pokemon according to a Dex entry in the same game that deconfirms Arcan's status. Tirtoga is believed to be the ancestor of all turtle Pokemon without any confirmation or deconfirmation as of now. Then there are some Pokemon that are stated to be related in the Pokédex, but without any hint as to how they are related. This is the case for Pokemon like Citadel and Wilmer, or Pikachu and Pachirisu, or Toxicroak and Seismitoad. Because of their similarities, we could say that they have a common ancestor, but the games don't really tell us what this relation is. It gets even more complex when you get into what the community calls regional fakes or convergent evolutions, as some Pokemon that look related are just outright not. Hell, if you breed a regional form of a Pokemon, let's say Alolan Rattata, and you bring the egg to a different region, it will hatch into a regular Rattata. This is strange because the reason Alolan Rattata look the way they do is because of adaptation. It sounds like it should work like real-life evolution does and just be a completely different species, but it's not. It's just a form, and it doesn't necessarily carry into the offspring of the Pokemon. No wonder this dude needs to make a completely different Pokédex every 3 years, holy moly. What I'm saying is that Pokemon seem to have really volatile DNA. The changes they go through are massive and sudden, and applying real-life evolution theory to them doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I think that's the whole point of regional fakes. It's to tell you, even if two Pokemon look the same, they might just not be related at all. Regional adaptation only changes the form of a Pokemon, it doesn't have any impact on its genes. With that out of the way, what is Pokemon evolution? Gen 4 explores this question through Professor Rowan, who researches this phenomena. In the game, he says the following: Pokemon that evolve and those that don't. What makes them different from each other? Do those that are immature as living beings evolve to ones more mature? If so, what do we make of the legendary Pokemon that don't evolve? Are we to assume that the legendary Pokemon are complete as creatures? The Japanese for the last part is actually a little different. This roughly translates to, if so, are legendary Pokemon which are considered to not evolve the complete form of living creatures? That is to say, Pokemon evolution is puberty. Okay, that's half a joke. Basically, Pokemon evolution just means that a Pokemon starts as something incomplete, and as they evolve into their final form, they become more and more complete. Pokemon that cannot evolve, like legendaries, are considered to be the ultimate form of a living being. This process also causes a release of energy, which is why Team Galactic is curious about Professor Rowan's research in the first place. You can view Pokemon evolution as an energy exchange, EXP, or the energy that some items have, or friendship. These trigger a certain factor within a Pokemon, and that factor allows them to evolve. At this point, their their DNA mutates as they are changing into a different species, and the energy that triggered their evolution is expulsed in the form of light. This release of light happens not only in evolution, but also when an egg hatches. But I think Pokemon breeding in eggs are best left for a completely different video. Knowing that, what is Mega Evolution? After all, it is just another form of evolution, right? The first appearance of Mega Evolution was actually not in X and Y, but rather the Genesect movie. It wasn't really explained back then, as it was the result of scrapped ideas for Black 2 and White 2, thanks to what we know from the Terra leak. Mewtwo, in this movie, can change into Mega Mewtwo Y without a trainer or an item, but the overall mechanic is the same. It's a temporary evolution that tires out the Pokemon afterwards. Pokemon X and Y formally introduced this transformation in 2013. In this game, the Mega Evolution Guru Gurkin describes it as a transformation that causes a Pokemon to go past its limits. In his words, Mega Evolution is a transformation of Pokemon that were thought to be unable to evolve any further. This is a reference to what we said earlier about Gen 4's views on regular evolution. It is believed that a Pokemon is complete once it reaches its final stage of maturity. It doesn't have another evolution factor. More EXP, more friendship, more items won't make it become a different species anymore. Mega Evolution makes a Pokemon more than complete. One could even say it brings them to the power level of a legendary Pokemon. Lysander goes one step further and talks about aspects of Sycamore's research. He explains that what Mega Evolution does is release all of a Pokemon's hidden potential at once. Hidden potential tells us that the ability to Mega Evolve is something inherent to a Pokemon. Some Pokemon have a Mega factor that can be triggered. The Mega Evolution Special actually reinforces this idea thanks to the exchange Elaine and Sycamore have. When two stones resonate, the Pokemon temporarily attains great power. Is it given to them by humans? No, it's the Pokemon's own power. Humans only draw out the power using the stone, that's all. In the same specials, Lysander also explains that this transformation is a result of a fighting instinct that got suppressed when humans started taming Pokemon. What Mega Evolution does is bring out this instinct again. That's why Pokemon that are forced to Mega Evolve, like the Garchomp in the anime and also the untrained Lucario, go berserk as soon as they Mega Evolve. Elaine points out when talking to Sycamore how, if their typing and abilities change, releasing the power might place a burden on the Pokemon. This is exactly what happens. Mega Evolution basically triggers a fight or die response for the Pokemon. That's why they point out it can only happen in battles. We can see how, even in Generation 6, the idea of Mega Evolutions being painful or causing stress for Pokemon is a really big deal that is talked about multiple times. Even in spin-offs and other pieces of Pokemon media, this is a really prevalent theme surrounding the Mega Evolution phenomena. Not only does the anime talk about it, the manga goes one step further and also explains the trainer goes through a similar mental stress, and they become unable to focus on anything other than fighting. The bond phenomenon might not exactly be the same as Mega Evolution, but it's a similar transformation that adds another layer to this aspect. Both Greninja and Ash are synchronized, and they feel each other's pain and stress to the point where they can pass out. Bonnie and Zygarde very subtly are shown to also experience the bond phenomena, as Bonnie can tell what Zygarde is feeling a lot of the time. PMD also shows us a variant of Mega Evolution that doesn't require a trainer for obvious reasons, but it makes the Pokemon go berserk if they stay in that state for too long. In summary, Mega Evolution is a phenomenon that causes a Pokemon to tap into its suppressed fighting instincts. It's a release of adrenaline that forces them to lock in. It does cause mental stress, but the stress is reduced when a Pokemon and its trainer work together and know each other well. The Terra leak actually mentions something similar in the ORS files, where they mention how what Mega Evolution does is increase the heart rate of a Pokemon and secrete an excess of neurotransmitters. This triggers the physical changes as well. Rogue Pokemon from Legends ZA will probably be how the Berserk mode works in PSMD, triggered by the Mega Crystals scattered around Lumio City. But if it's an inherent part of a Pokemon, why are humans necessary for the phenomena to trigger? How does the trigger work? This instinct is described as being dormant by Lysander, and the games go on to say how the use of Megastones and Keystones are necessary to awaken it. The term Keystone only appears since ORAS, but I'll use it for X and Y too for simplicity. Sycamore mentions how Keystones transform feelings into wavelengths that react to a given Megastone. The Japanese uses the word omoi, which is a little more vague than feelings. It can also be used for wishes, goals, desires, thoughts in general. I find this useful to know because of something that will appear when I talk about ORAS in a second. Regardless, he compares this transformation that Keystones allow to the way the sundial in Anastar City radiates a mysterious light at a specific time of the day, and then further connects Keystones with the sundial. If you know how the electromagnetic spectrum works, this is very similar. Basically, Keystones transform wishes, thoughts, and feelings into a light with a specific wavelength, and then the Megastone receives this light and emits some sort of energy that triggers a Pokemon Pokemon's Mega Factor. This Mega Factor secretes neurotransmitters that makes the Pokemon go through physical changes. If you manage to make a machine that creates these specific wavelengths, like what Xerneas seems to do in the anime thanks to the Megalith, then you would be able to force transformations or use the power of Mega Evolution to your advantage. Sycamore also explains how some stones radiated by the light of Xerneas and Yveltal through the Ultimate Weapon's beam become Megastones. This gets further explained at Oras, where the actual origin of Mega Evolution is discussed. Let's talk about that right now. Oras presents Mega Rayquaza as the first Mega Evolution, which seems to contradict what we are told in Pokemon X and Y. In that game, a trainer with a Lucario was the first Mega Evolution to occur after they found 2 stones. However, I don't think this is actually a contradiction. Rayquaza's Mega Evolution happened under vastly different circumstances. First of all, there wasn't really a Mega Stone. Instead, it was Rayquaza's own organs that fulfilled that role. The Mikado organ allows Rayquaza to consume meteorites in order to create an effect similar to what a Rayquazanite would do. Fun fact, the word Mikado is comprised of the same kanji as triangle, which is the shape of the delta. The energy this organ produces can react with a powerful enough keystone. In the past, what happened was that the wishes of people of Sootopolis reacted with the same meteorite that created the city, and that became the keystone that allowed Rayquaza to Mega Evolve. If you're noticing a concerning amount of meteorites, you'd be right. This is yet another case of outer space having a really important effect on Pokemon lore. Meteorites and space rocks are the rocks that become either Megastones or Keystones depending on the energy they are radiated with. My guess is that the meteorites in Pokemon also have weird properties. After all, it is from them that Deoxys emerges in the Delta episode, a space virus that also mutated due to unknown reasons. I don't think it's a coincidence they made Deoxys the final boss of the Delta episode. I think they're establishing this connection between meteorites and Mega Evolution. Even the XYZ anime echoes this idea, as it is stated that the sundial is an object that inexplicably came from space and contains the same energy Mega Evolution does. In fact, it appeared 3,000 years ago, the same period of time in which the ultimate weapon was fired. The sundial probably has the same properties as the meteorite that lies underneath Sootopolis City. They are both forms of keystones. It is also specified that the sundial is made with technology that is not possible for humans of that era, and also AZ built machines with similarly complex technology, so it is possible that the ultimate weapon was built from the sundial. As for Megastones themselves, because of how the ultimate weapon was powered and because they require specific wavelengths for each Pokemon, it is safe to say that they are a mix of meteorite, the light of Xerneas or Yveltal, and Pokemon bioenergy. After all, the life energy of Pokemon is what was used to power up the weapon, and also to create infinity energy by the hands of the Devon Corporation. Can these companies stop experimenting on Pokemon? Oh my god. To put it all together, Oras tells us how Megastones and Keystones were created. Mega Rayquaza was the first Mega Evolution, but the trainer with a Lucario from Kalos was probably the first one that actually used a Megastone and a Keystone as we know it. No fancy Mikado organs or unknown things. It was the first time humans learned how they could recreate the phenomenon. As such, Kalos considers it to be the first Mega Evolution. No problems there. X and Y stated that Mega Evolution was found only in Kalos, and this is where we'll concede that yes, this got retconned. Mega Evolution can happen anywhere as long as a Megastone and a Keystone exist. The funniest thing can be seen in a document from the Terra League, where you can see Game Freak literally crossing out Mega Evolutions happen only in Kalos and putting it in red. Needless to say, they realized how restrictive this would be and just changed it. I don't think there's anything deeper to it. One last thing I'd like to mention about Oras is Primal Regression. These are distinctively not Mega Evolutions. They are a different form of evolution, and it is stated in the games themselves. The same can be said for the Bond phenomenon and something else I'll mention in a bit. Primal Regression is exactly what the name implies. Groudon and Kyogre going back to the power level they originally had, back when the planet was overflowing with natural energy. This search for natural energy is what triggers the transformation, as Groudon and Kyogre seek to consume it and fight over it, something we can even see during the Mega Evolution specials. Despite this, there are some similarities with Mega Evolution, especially once you get to Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Moon's Dex entries, as there are quite a few that point to specific megas like Aerodactyl or Ampharos being its true appearance or awakening its dormant genes. The Bond phenomenon is also similar to megas, but clearly distinct, as it doesn't require any sort of items, not even a keystone, which Rayquaza does. It is a lot more volatile and causes much more stress on the trainer, but it also involves some wavelength synchronization as we see in the anime. So what's with all the different transformations? Why all of them in Gen 6? Isn't it a little confusing? Honestly, yeah it is. But ultimately, I think that wildly important mechanic is Mega Evolution, Gen 6 was trying to expand on Pokemon evolution in general by saying there are many ways in which Pokemon can transform beyond regular evolution, and they all work in very different ways. In space, rocks. Gen 7 doesn't really add much that we haven't talked about already. The Mega Dex entries are new, but mostly just expand on the idea that Mega Evolution causes some stress, both physical and mental, to the Pokemon. Some people say that the reason why these entries were added is because they wanted to dissuade people from using Mega Evolution, and instead they wanted them to use Z-moves. Some other people say that the reason why Pokemon feel this pain is because the transformation is happening outside of the Kalos region. But I argue that this is just a natural extension of what we already knew from Generation 6, and not only that, but the physical pain that some Pokemon feel upon Mega Evolving is also something that happens with regular evolution as well. For example, take a look at Gyarados' entry in Omega Ruby. When Magikarp evolves into Gyarados, its brain cells undergo a structural transformation. It is said that this transformation is to blame for this Pokemon's wildly violent nature. In other words, some Pokemon feel pain too when they evolve regularly. It's nothing exclusive to Mega Evolution. I want to talk about one last thing, and that is Xerneas, Yveltal's, and Zygarde's role when it comes to these transformations. I've already talked about Infinity Energy, and how that is made from the life energy of Pokemon, much like the ultimate weapon. Mabel in Pokemon X and Y goes as far as to point out how the Mega Ring and the ultimate weapon work in the same way. They both can max out a Pokemon's power. I believe there is no better example of this than Eternal Flower Floette, a Pokemon that revived thanks to the ultimate weapon, with increased stats when compared to Floette and without having the ability to evolve. Another Pokemon also goes through something similar, Diancie, which has 100 more BSD than Carping, a sudden transformation of Carping. Its pink, glimmering body is said to be the loveliest side of the whole world. Why can't Eternal Flower Floette evolve into Florges? The answer is simple: it has reached its complete form, and Pokemon that are complete do not evolve. And how has it reached that power? That's right, through the life force of other Pokemon. The idea that Xerneas represents life is correct, but I don't think it represents it in this abstract way. It's not the concept of life or anything as vague as that. Xerneas is literally the producer of life energy, and life energy, I believe, is the energy of evolution. I want to take a look at PSMD again, as that is another major appearance of Xerneas. And what can Xerneas do in that game? That's right, they are the one responsible for helping Pokemon evolve when you visit them. The embodiment of the Tree of Life is also the one that allows for evolution to happen. It happened around 800 years ago. The Pokemon known as Xerneas used its shining horns to illuminate the lands of Kalos. At that very moment, people in Pokemon throughout the land felt great energy and vitality surge through their bodies. Yveltal, on the other hand, is described as the Pokemon that absorbs life force to charge its own energy, but its Pokédex entry specifies something interesting. When its life comes to an end, it absorbs the life energy of every living thing and turns into a cocoon once more. When its life comes to an end. Yveltal is just a Pokemon that is trying to survive. It absorbs energy not out of hate or greed, but out of pure necessity. Once it has absorbed enough energy to survive, it goes to sleep, and Xerneas awakens. A certain chapter of the XY manga shows us how Yveltal and Xerneas sleep. Yveltal sleeps in the form of a cocoon underneath Xerneas' Tree of Life. I think this image is genuinely beautiful once you think a little deeper about what it implies. Trees don't just grow fruit out of nowhere. They need to feed too. And once they've produced fruit, said fruit falls and gives back to the ecosystem. It helps feed animals. Its seeds are planted somewhere else for new trees to grow. Xerneas spreads life energy to help that ecosystem bloom, spread, and grow, but it needs to feed on energy as well to do that. And that is Yveltal's role. Yveltal gives energy to Xerneas. That is probably why it's weak to Xerneas' typing. And then it feeds on the fruit that Xerneas creates to start the cycle anew. If Xerneas didn't exist, Yveltal wouldn't either, because it wouldn't have anything to feed upon. If Yveltal didn't exist, Xerneas wouldn't be able to create life either. Evolution cannot exist on its own. Infinity Energy needs a source. Rayquaza needs to feed on something to produce the energy that allows it to Mega Evolve. Xerneas and Yveltal need to provide for each other in order to spread the gift of life to the world. X and Y story touches upon how the world has limited resources and how there needs to be balance between giving and taking. Mega Evolution gives a Pokemon a burst of life energy, but this resource is equally as limited as any other. The more a Pokemon stays in its Mega Evolved state, the more it will struggle to stay like that. If every single Pokemon started wildly Mega Evolving uncontrollably, there would be a demand for life energy that would be simply unfeasible, and as such, many would have to be sacrificed for the sake of the few that can Mega Evolve. Just look at how many Pokemon had to die for the sake of reviving a single Floette. And that is where I think Zygarde comes into play. I do not think Zygarde exists as a counter to Xerneas and Yveltal, but to humans. Zygarde can be found in many regions, Kalos, Alola, and now even Paldea thanks to Horizons. But Zygarde watches over is not Xerneas and Yveltal. Sure, it can fight them if that's necessary, but we've actually mostly seen it fight other things, Ultra Necrozma or Lysander. Zygarde watches over how people in Pokemon use the resources they are given, and it punishes them accordingly when they misuse them. And if humans decide to take and take and take without thinking about how that will affect the world that has granted them the gift of life, then it will balance out the scales. That will be all for today. This took a long time. I had to watch Pokemon XYZ all over again, play through X and Y, read some of the manga. Kill me. I have taken, I have given, and now it's your turn to give me by subscribing. Okay, no, but seriously, I learned a lot of interesting details myself, and I hope you did too. This was meant to be a video on Mega Evolution alone at first, but it turned into many different things. It might be a little bit of a mess of ideas, but that's just how it is with me. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you some other time. Keep dreaming.